so these are strategies for non-fiction stories. So we talked about fiction in my other video. Now we're talking about non-fiction strategies. So non-fiction means that these are books that are real. They're not fake. They're not talking about, animals talking, or, a story about the Red Riding Hood or Three Little Pigs. We're not talking about fiction stories no more. We're talking about non-fiction. Non-fiction books are usually things that, are real. Kind of like this book, Jupiter and Saturn. That's non-fiction. Matter, right? Changing form. We're talking about matter. We're talking about science. That's nonfiction. If we're talking about a book about a president, that's nonfiction. So in this one, we're talking about deserts. Okay, so this one is, as you can see, I call these strategies CAP-G. And this is just an acronym just so they can remember what it is. But the first thing is that they have to look for is, well, one, they have to write their title. In this case, the story that we were talking about was living in deserts. And let me actually go back and show you what that looks like. So on living in deserts right here is my story. It looks, again, all their stories are going to be online because in the actual STAR test, all their stories are online. There's nothing that's going to be on paper. So if you look here, here's the table of contents, there's a chapter, here's a picture, there's another chapter, and I think there's even, an index, a glossary, right? And so this is, again, there's no characters, there's no problem, there's no solution, a lesson, there's nothing of that. But there are some things that they have to be looking for. So when they do their strategies, the first thing that they have to do is something called PI. So they want the students to know what is the purpose of why the student, why the author wrote this. Is it trying to persuade you? Is it trying to convince you to do something? Is it trying to inform you, just give you information, or is it trying to entertain you? Usually, majority of the time, non-fiction stories are going to inform you. They're going to give us information. In this case, they're giving us information about deserts, right? And so that's where the claim comes. So what's the claim? What are they claiming that they're doing in the book? Are they trying to persuade you, inform you? No, they're just trying to inform us, right? They're trying to inform us, gives us information about deserts. That's what they're doing. That's what claim means. Claim means is, what is this author doing? Why did they write it? What's the claim, right? What are they doing? Now, how do you know? What are the arguments? How do you know? How do you know that they're doing this? Well, because in paragraph 2, it states deserts is an extreme place to live. They're giving me information about deserts, right? Right off the bat in the very beginning. They're telling me what they're doing. In paragraph 2, it states deserts is an extreme place to live. Okay. Now, the audience, right? Who are they trying to speak to? The author. Who did he write this book to? Kids and grown-ups. Any kid, any grown-up can read this and understand this. And when they're talking, in the book, they're talking about you. Watch. It says here, you are thirsty. You will not have much luck. That means that whoever's reading this, they're talking to you, right? And so here in this case, if I was reading it, I'm an adult. If a kid was reading it, they'd be a kid. So it'd be anyone who is reading it. They're talking to anyone, kids and grown-ups. Then print features, what are some things that they see? And this goes back to what I'm teaching this week, which is text features. We see table of contents. If we go back, we see table of contents in the very beginning. We see it right here, table of contents. The next thing we look for is headings. How many headings do we have? Those are the little titles that tells us what's going on in the paragraphs. We have one heading here, welcome to the desert. We have another heading here. And so what these strategies are doing is that they are reminding the students about text features. And they're giving them the chance that even before reading, they can already have some information. And that's what I'm trying to explain to my kids, that even before you read, just by looking at the index, just by looking at the glossary, just by looking at captions, at table of contents, headings, just by looking at those things, you can already guess and get that get some good information about what the story is going to be about. If you look here, table of contents, welcome to the desert, people of the desert, living in the desert. This story is going to be talking about the desert, miss. Yep. If you look at this, welcome to the desert, right? If you look at this, this picture, just by looking at the picture, what can you infer? What can you guess? Maybe there's a problem, is because look, he looks like he's stuck. People of the desert. There's people who live in the desert, miss. Well, how do they live there? Living in the desert, that means it's livable. So they do survive over there. So just by looking at it, you can already I haven't even read it and I already know what it's going to be about. So that's what I tell them. I'm trying to emphasize to the students that with nonfiction strategies, just by looking at it, graphic features, you have a photograph of a car, you have a map of Africa, you already know what's going on before even reading. And so again, these strategies help them to actually, try to get as much information as possible before even reading. Now, the second, and again, this, all of this is being filled out as they read. As they read, they're reading, they're filling out. They're going back and forth. They're reading and filling out, reading and filling out, back and forth, back and forth. As they're doing that, they're filling it out. All at the same time. The first parts of the strategies is always like that. Now, the second part of the strategies, this is where they have to go, and prove their answer. And so if you look at question 1, let's look at question 1. It says, what is an oasis? Okay, and so again, I tell my students, guys, your answer, you're gonna find it in the book. You're not gonna find it anywhere else. You're gonna find it in the book. And so here in Oasis, again, I have some students who, will click whatever. And once I tell them, a ver, show me. A ver, ¿dónde dice ahí que en el libro dice que un oasis is a very large desert? And they'll kind of look at me and, look through the story and say, no, pues no lo encontré. Well, if you didn't find it, that probably means that's not your answer, so you got to go back. So here, our answer is an area of a desert that has water. Now, how do I know? Oh, Miss, porque in paragraph 10, Miss, mira, I went back and I read it. In paragraph 10, it says, an oasis has enough water. And an oasis has enough water to grow crops. Mira, Miss, aquí dice paragraph 10. Ah, okay. So you see how that person proved their answers? Well, I have to go back to my strategies and make sure that I write it down. So, question 1, I found my answer in paragraph 10. It states an oasis has enough water to grow crops. That proves that that's my answer. So, again, these parts of the strategies shows them to go back to the answer. It shows them to go back to where they gotta go. So, this is very, very important because it really pushes them to do that, okay? But basically, that's nonfiction. It's just these, you see how it's very different from fiction. Fiction was, the characters, the setting, the problem, solution. This one's not like that. This one is more, what are they talking about? How do you know? Who are they talking about? What are some print features? Just these two, just by looking at the book, just by looking at it, they can already see what print features is there, what graphic features is there. These 3 they might have to read to understand it, but these 2 they can, just by looking at, oh, there's a table of contents, there's a caption, there's a map. Okay, so these are fairly easy. And what does this do? This really allows the students to have them stop and focus on the story, read the story. Okay, because that's what we want. We want their attention to be on the story. But again, if you have any questions on how to do this, if you need a little bit more explanation, please, comment down below or message me through Remind. That way I can get back to you as soon as possible.